Yeah, I did that. And then I was like, there's no way I'm the only one here at 4. So
Good afternoon, everyone. It's 4:01. We are going to give people another minute to join. I know there are some people, unfortunately, there was a Teams link that some people have popped into, so hopefully some people will join us. So maybe get another minute and we'll get underway.
Mike, there's a question in the chat. Will you be able to answer this? I know that we are recording. Do you know how we'll be able to make the recording available? Will we post it to our website, or should I can ask comms and come back?
Yeah, I will have a link to the recording that we can send out to people. Unfortunately, since we didn't get registrations ahead of time, I don't know. I want to make sure I get people's email addresses for people who do want. We can post on our website, I think. And we can also share this in our next newsletter as well, so that the information is publicly available.
we can put it on the disability rights website as well and share it with our networks.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
All right, well, it is 4:02. I do want to get underway and get started. I think hopefully more people will be joining us as the meeting keeps on going. So thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. My name is Mike Salisbury. I work on electrified mobility at the City and County of Denver's Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency. I'm going to put in a second, I'm also going to start sharing my screen with some slides. I'll put a link to that presentation in the chat so that anyone can get their own copy of the slides. We'll also share them the same places we share the recording of the meeting. I will start sharing my screen in a minute, but before I do, I have a brief agenda, but wanted to go ahead and give some space for some great representatives from the city just to introduce themselves quickly. Councilman Hines, would you like to start us off?
I would be honored. Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Hines. I serve on Denver City Council representing District 10. I've made assumptions in the past that everyone knows who I am, but just in case, I am the first elected official in Denver's history, local, state, or federal, who uses a wheelchair for mobility. Also the first who identifies as a member of the disability community. That is first, I really thank and respect the voters of District 10 to give me this opportunity to hashtag break barriers or breaking barriers or whatever the hashtag is. But certainly I am doing what I can to represent the disability community. When we worked on the minimum wage bill, as an example, I added an amendment that that made sure that everyone in Denver got paid minimum wage. We in the state of Colorado, we could allow people with physical disabilities to get paid 15% less than minimum wage. Yes, that was legal even in 2019. In the city of Denver, we made sure that that didn't happen. We also more recently and more topically, we've been working on change to the 2022 building code to make sure that all new buildings with EV charging stations have universally designed spaces so everyone can park in every space. Whether you have a wheelchair van, it's just a wider space. Whether you have a wheelchair van or a regular car, and that I believe we'll be voting on in the next month or so to adopt into law, and that is in the building code as is. So certainly trying to represent the disability community on council. This is a topic where I goofed. I wasn't as proactive in advocating for the disability community as I could have. We've had a very successful e-bike rebate program. It did not include the opportunity for people with disabilities, people in wheelchairs like me, or who use other assistive devices or a member of the disability community to have access to some of those rebates. And so here is an opportunity for us to listen to you to make sure that we can make up for that goof. And we do intend to provide more funds for rebates for lots of different things that will help us preserve our habitability on the planet. But this is certainly an opportunity for us to be intentionally inclusive, which we should be, since we're using taxpayer monies. The taxpayer dollars should be available for everyone, regardless of who you are, ability or disability in this case. So thank you for coming. I'm really interested in the conversation. And thanks, CASR and Mr. Salisbury, for giving me the space.
Thank you, Councilman. Allison?
Hello, folks. My name's Allison Butler, and I am what I call the new-ish. I've been here about 6 months, Director of Denver's Division of Disability Rights. We are a city agency that works within the city to help make sure city agencies understand and comply and exceed disability justice laws. And then we also work directly with the community to make sure that our advice is well informed by the communities that we serve. So we were the ones who initially got this question/complaint about if there were e-bikes available for folks with disabilities who needed a different kind of adaptive bike. And we brought it to CASR, and CASR immediately took it and ran with it. So we're continuing on as help. We can be a liaison between the community and the city, and we can help out in whatever way possible. Also got a couple of members of our team here. We've got Christina Erickson. She's huge in the adaptive recreation community, and if she wants to say hi, she can. And I just also want to point out we've got Joan LaBelle, who is officially new. She's been here about a month, and she's the ADA coordinator for our office. And I'll let them each just give a quick hi.
Hi, I'm Joan. I'm glad to be here and hearing what this is all about.
And hey, I'm Christina. I oversee program access, work under Allison, so really excited to be here. And I also work in adaptive recreation. So here, I'm excited for a lot of reasons.
All right, thank you. Grace.
Thanks so much, Mike. And hi, I'm Grace Rank. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency. And I first want to give tremendous thanks to Allison and team and Councilman Hines for helping to pull this event together. As Allison said, as soon as this issue was brought to us, we immediately knew that we had to act and work to make our programs benefit everybody in the community. I'm really, really excited for this conversation today. And I am going to encourage everyone to know that I am open, our agency is open to all solutions. And so although this conversation is specifically about e-bikes, I want us all to remember that our mission in this agency is not to get everybody in the world on an e-bike. Our mission is to reduce emissions and to give people freedom of mobility without being attached to single occupancy car trips in regular gas cars. So if you have something in mind, if you get to have an aha moment, say, wait, there's something else we could do. There's some other way that this office can meet its mission and improve mobility options for people with disabilities. We absolutely want to hear that. So don't hesitate. If you think that you've got an idea that's not related to e-bikes, go ahead and say it anyway. This is absolutely an open forum, and we're really excited to hear your ideas. Thank you very much. Mike, I turn it back to you.
Thank you, Grace. I appreciate that. So I'm going to go ahead, share my screen. I promise I've got a few kind of background slides. I just want to set the stage a little bit for background information on our office and our programs we have today, but no one wants to hear me yammer on for this session. So definitely we'll have to keep the background information short so we can start getting feedback. Let's see. Trying to share my screen in there eventually. Go into presentation mode. All right, thank you for your patience. Hopefully everyone has seen that. Quick just agenda to go through. So really just, again, starting out at a very high level, talking about our office sustainability, what we do. Denver's been working on sustainability for a long time now, since Mayor Hickenlooper started Greenprint back in 2010. We've been doing it informally for decades with recycling programs, things like that. The office that I work for and Grace works for came about through negotiation between the mayor, city council, and local environmental advocates who wanted to see the city doing more. So Mayor Hancock convened a climate action task force that met between January and July of 2020. And then our office, CASR, Climate Action, Sustainability, and Resiliency, came into being. The purpose of our office is to really centralize city policy and programs around reducing greenhouse gas emissions while keeping our most vulnerable, climate vulnerable communities at the center of our work. So this is kind of what does today look like? The current state of greenhouse emissions in Denver. Fortunately, Denver does not look like this every day, but we all know that we have really bad air pollution days in the city. So from a greenhouse gas perspective, the majority of our emissions do come from energy use for space and water heating in our buildings and homes. Transportation is the second largest source of greenhouse gas emissions. It's also the largest source of kind of air pollution in the city. So obviously this is really bad for the planet. It's also really horrible for public health and makes the places that we love to be, like the mountains around us, not great, and hurts the tourism industry and things like that. The reasons why people come to Colorado today, why people want to live in Colorado today. So this is what we're aiming for, the future state, if you will. So beautiful blue skies, clear views of the mountains. And so based on the climate science and the recommendation or the imperative from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, Mayor Hancock has adopted the goal of eliminating emissions completely by 2040. We also have set an interim target that by 2030, we have a 65% reduction in emissions over a 2019 baseline. So the goal accounts not just for Denver's current emissions profile, but also for our place among industrialized nations where we have contributed much more to the climate crisis than of other smaller nations over time. So in Denver, we are very, very fortunate that in 2020, Denver voters approved a sales tax measure that generates about $40 million per year for our office's programs. These are the 6 allowable uses that we're allowed to spend the money on. And the sustainable transportation category is where we'll focus today's discussion. Though if we do have extra time, we're happy to jump in and try to answer questions about the other allowable uses as well. So quickly about the sustainable transportation program. So we try to provide some different types of mobility options. But again, as Grace mentioned, they all have the same goal. We're trying to reduce people driving by themselves. We want people of Denver to have more mobility options so they can get where they want to go quickly and efficiently, and to do that with 0 emissions. So we don't have all the solutions yet, but we're working on it, and I'll briefly describe some of our current programs. So unfortunately, Denver is a city in the Front Range regionally. We are highly dependent on personal vehicles to get around. One of the leading strategies that Denver has been working on for a while now is making driving an electric vehicle an easy choice for people who want to purchase their own EV, and also looking to expand access to electric vehicles for people who either can't or don't want to own their own. To that end, we've installed about 30 publicly available charging stations across the city, with many more in the pipeline. We've worked with Colorado Car Share to provide 6 electric vehicles as part of their car share program, along with the charging stations to support them, and also subsidized memberships for 450 lower income residents. We're also funding an all-electric, fully accessible shuttle bus for the Montbello Organizing Committee, which will use it in collaboration with other nonprofits in the area to support excursions, food deliveries, and other social programs that are happening in the Montbello neighborhood. And so while most people do use a car to get around, we're really also are focusing on funding programs that reduce that reliance. The Denver Connector, which today operates in Montbello, is one example, is also expanding into the Globeville, Elyria, Swansea neighborhoods in 2023. This program is a free ride-hailing service that makes getting to important destinations in the neighborhood, like RTD stops, shopping, jobs, really easy and convenient. So today, thousands of residents of Montbello are making use of this. And as Grace mentioned, a lot of what we are interested in feedback in today, especially, is the e-bike program. Today, over 4,500 people have taken advantage of this program, and almost half of them are income qualified Denver residents. We've also provided e-cargo bikes to support delivery trips for nonprofits like Denver Food Rescue and Bicycle Colorado. We also have e-bike libraries, which is the first program funded by the Climate Protection Fund that allow lower income Denver residents the ability to rent out an e-bike for weeks at a time to get where they need to go on a day-to-day basis. So, taken alone, they are kind of all small programs, but I think overall, we are starting to have an impact on the transportation sector in Denver. So this is kind of pause here. Some of those programs I think can work well for people in the disability community, but not all of them. So I'm really eager to hear ideas, thoughts, solutions that will enable the disability community to have the same freedom of access to services with zero emissions. It makes it really easy to avoid solo car trips like we talked about. And I'm also happy to kind of dig in deeper and answer more questions about programs or the e-bike program, but really wanted to hear from you and get your thoughts as well. And I'm also going to, next slide is just my contact information. This is not the only time we're gonna have a chance for feedback and we wanna hear your thoughts. So this is my email. Happy to kind of interact with anyone, anytime who has additional feedback outside of this session. So please don't feel this is your only chance to be a part of this conversation today. So kind of going back, just wanna open up the floor. I'm gonna stop sharing screen so we can actually see each other a little easier, but I can pull it back up if there are people who have specific questions or thoughts they want to share. So people want to start talking, raise your hand, whatever people feel comfortable with. Really eager to hear any thoughts people might have.
Mike, I see a question in the chat asking, are we aware of Intellaride? And I certainly do know of Intellaride and other, there are programs like it. I guess I'm interested to know, does that type of program work for folks? I know these programs sometimes do and sometimes don't. That I'd be interested to know more about that.
Sorry, so I guess I can answer on that. I muted myself on my headset. So to qualify for Intellaride, you have to be on Medicaid, Colorado Medicaid, and it's a ride sharing service to various appointments. So when I was on Colorado Medicaid, it was something I would use very, very frequently to doctor's appointments. And what they would do is, it's a ride sharing service. So if someone else was going, say, to the same building or like a few miles near whatever building, they would pick up another person along the way who had scheduled a ride. They have an app as well for smartphones, but in terms of like sustainability and trying to lower like emissions via driving through a car, that was how they did that. So it's really a lot of disabled persons use it. I was one who used it quite a bit for a while.
Thanks, Allie. Were all their vehicles fully accessible, or WAV vehicles?
The majority were. There were quite a few. So like when you schedule on the app, it will give you an option to select like mobility. So if someone's in a wheelchair, you can select that. For one time I was in crutches, so I needed a more accessible entrance to a car. So I selected like help with accessibility, or sorry, mobility. So yeah, they had specialized cars for it. You just had to make sure to mark that down.
Thank you. Doug, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, first, thank you for putting this together. I appreciate it. And so I have two questions. One is, are there plans to have future conversations with more folks who are in the disability community? I see a lot of great organizations here, and I see councilmen, and these are great things. However, I think also to get some really healthy feedback, we need to engage more folks who are in the trend, on the ground, in the grass kind of thing. And that's not a bad thing, just more voices, because there are some folks here that I don't know if are represented here. And I don't want to misspeak, because there's a lot of folks who are not on screen, and I don't want to presume or assume anything. But I also think being able to have just a broader conversation with more of our Denver residents would be helpful. So the question is there plans for future listening sessions? That was what that question was. And then my second question is, I love the idea of the e-bike rebates, because I want to do this great crazy trip across the Erie Canal, which is 300 some miles, and I'm a wheelchair user, so I have to have a hand cycle. But finding a electric hand cycle is a real pain in the backside, and finding that with any ability to pay for it, given all the other barriers that are put in a lot of folks' life when we're working with disabilities. You know, we can't have more than X amount of dollars. We can't do this. You can't do that. You can't work, or you lose your medical. But if you lose your medical, you can't do stuff. But staying on the bike is healthy. And I'll stop there before I go any further down that rabbit hole. But so the question really is, who in Denver is going to be the vendors that are going to have equipment that are accessible bikes that can be electric ran? Because it's great to have the rebates, but if we don't have the vendors, it's really hard to be able to use that. Those become, it was frustrating to not see the rebates available, but it's more frustrating to not be able to apply for something, because the reality is having someone who you can buy that from is near impossible. I've been to several bike shops and I just can't find hand cycles, but then add the electric component. And I'm looking at a specialized $10,000 bike online. And so all of those pieces. So yeah, I'll stop there and let you answer those questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate your feedback. I think, yeah, we're very much open, to continuing to have listening sessions. We know that this is the start of our conversation, the start of us getting input. So we definitely want to, whether it's kind of more one-on-one meetings or larger community meetings, definitely want to keep on getting feedback, so we can keep on making our programs better and better designed. So I think to give you my initial thoughts around the adaptive e-bikes question. So we've been trying to think about this, like how we can make the program more accessible to people who are, say, riding a hand bicycle, things like that. So there's, I think, a couple initial thoughts from our perspective. As we know, while there's 30 shops in Denver, but I don't know that any of them will stock kind of the adaptive e-bikes. They're pretty hard to find. So, a couple ideas we've had are thinking about, well, there are a few shops, I think, in Colorado that do sell things. There's a shop, Angel Tech Cycles in Colorado Springs, that I think carries an adaptive e-bike, a hand bike. There's a couple, I think e-bikes of Colorado up in Louisville might have some. So anyway, that's one possibility, because generally now the program is limited to bike shops that are in the city of Denver or close in the borders of the city of Denver. So that's something we thought about. It's like for bike shops that focus on these adaptive e-bikes or have them in their stores, kind of expanding the ability to offer it to more bike shops across the state of Colorado. Another thing we've thought about is allowing retrofits of adaptive bikes. We've heard that can be sometimes an affordable way to take an existing, say, hand bicycle, and then there's an organization, Electric Bike Outfitters in Denver, that will retrofit an existing adaptive bike to be an e-bike. So that's another potential path forward to get someone an adaptive e-bike that could potentially be part of the program. We've also thought about there's potential online sales. We don't allow those right now in the program, but for something like this, that's another thing we could consider doing, is allowing people to purchase an e-bike online. Another thought is kind of packaging all these programs together, having a third party work and kind of develop rather than trying to, adapt our current program, working with a third party to potentially develop a kind of a adaptive focused program that can help meet the broader needs without trying to fit it into our existing program. So those are just a couple ideas we've had that I think, all those we could think about how that e-bike incentive would apply to those different types of bikes. I think, right now we offer up to $1,700 is the highest level of rebate we allow in the program. So, maybe that would be available to those electric bikes and make them a little more affordable. So I'm going to stop talking. Those are just some of the initial ideas we've had, but again, are trying to figure out what's going to work for people and make the most sense. Doug, do you have your hand up again? I couldn't tell if that was you raising your hand again.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me, from the first part of what I said to you, I want to also thank everyone who is here. Please don't think that my bringing more people in is a dig at anyone. I just also am very much please don't make decisions about us without us kind of person. So please know that that's where my mind frame is. But I appreciate everyone being here. And then another question that I was thinking about is you were bringing up all these great things. And then there's a suggestion, the suggestion being, as we're adapting things, if we can make sure that folks with disabilities don't have to jump through 3,000 extra hurdles and hoops, that would be really awesome. We already have that. So as we're talking about how to adapt and adjust these programs to include our folks with disabilities, I like all those different ideas. Just as we're creating that verification system, let's just be thoughtful about all the other hoops and loops we're asking people to jump through, because those can be very discouraging. And then the other piece to that is, does your office work with the Limes and the Ubers and things like that to see if we can find the shares, the electric bike shares and all that, if there's ways to also start incorporating those folks into bringing in some accessible equipment? Because I think one of the challenges with vendors is that they don't see a market. I've heard that several times. So accessible bikes are not just for folks with disabilities. There's plenty of folks out there with bad knees, bad backs that could use a hand cycle. So are there conversations with that? Is there some ways in which we can work with some of the outfits and programs already happening to also just start to include that, so we can create some more visibility to make it more of a market?
Could I jump in real quick? I think that's very interesting, and it's something that I've been wondering actually is to what extent does the disability community rely on the transportation network providers or transportation companies, whatever they're called, Lyft and Uber? Is there something the city can do to make that service work better and be more accessible? So that's kind of a parallel or tandem question with what you're asking. I can't speak for Mike. I know I haven't reached out to Lyft or Lime yet specifically about their electrified mobility programs, but I think certainly as a city that grants them a contract here, to provide those services, we know the people in the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure who manage that, and we absolutely can bring that idea to them.
May I add something as well? So two things: micromobility, as in like scooters and whatnot, and then also TNC's transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft. So Colorado, let's do Uber and Lyft first. Colorado is the first state in the nation to provide regulation around TNCs or transportation network companies. That was in 2014. CCDC and I both testified against the legislation as it was proposed in 2014 because it made no provision for people with disabilities. I see Jose nodding. And then subsequently in those conversations, Uber and Lyft said that they would make some provisions. Well, it's 2022 and nothing's changed. So I have I went to Mexico City 4 months ago for a work trip. Turns out that Mexico City has Uber Assist, which is a facility specifically for people with disabilities. So it allows a driver to say, I'm willing to break down a wheelchair or whatever, and allow someone on the platform to say, I use a wheelchair or whatever. And so Uber Assist exists right now in Mexico City, which is a developing country. And so I have reached out to Uber and Lyft for their thoughts about that. I also chair the committee that oversees the airport, and the contracts for Uber and Lyft are coming due in the next month for a new contract for both Uber and Lyft. So I am doing my best to add that language into the contract with Uber and Lyft and the airport, that they have to have this facility, which is apparently already fully built, that they have that facility and they turn it on for any Uber or Lyft facility coming into or out of the airport. If they're going to do the airport, they might as well do Denver. If they're going to do Denver, they might as well do Colorado. So that's my hope. So that's TNCs. And then micromobility, the city entered into contracts with Lyft and Lime on May 10th, 2021. I remember that because I voted against the contracts as they were, because they were taking right away from people with disabilities and providing nothing for people with disabilities. Both contracts had a line in the contract that said that that vendor shall endeavor to, within a year of the contract execution, make provisions for people with disabilities. It's more than a year later, and so I've been asking Dottie, where is that? And I've been asking the vendors, where are these provisions? Shall endeavor to is what Yoda says not to do. We should do or do not. We shouldn't try. So my hope here is to have these conversations with our transportation folks. And so, Grace, if you're willing to chat with them as well, here's a little extra information for you to advocate on behalf of the disability community. I'm not all the way there. Obviously, I haven't made full progress with this conversation, but now we all have a little bit more information that we can use to advocate for everyone, including the disability community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. I think in order, I see Ali's hand is up.
Yeah. So this is kind of in response to what Doug had asked or talked about, I guess. And Mr. Hines kind of expanded on some stuff that I didn't even know about. But Uber is currently allowing you to essentially dispute a charge for it taking you time to get into the vehicle. And that exists for persons with disability. Lime made themselves accessible by at least like a little bit more accessible, in my opinion. With if you're able to prove that you're on like Medicaid or Medicare, then they give you like a serious discount on all their products. And I'm on the Auraria campus, so these things are like left and right to me. So there's that there. And let me tell you, as someone, so I have epilepsy and I legally will never be able to drive because of it. So ride sharing service and Ubers and Lyfts and IntelliRide are things that I heavily rely on. And let me tell you, Uber and Lyfts, they add up pretty freaking quick. So I know that's something that at least the disability community really relies on. And I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure at like the city level, Denver could go contact Uber or Lyft and say, hey, give persons with disabilities a discount. But if that's something you guys could do, that would be super helpful, because persons with disabilities, especially myself, we tend to be out of work for things like surgeries and various types of appointments. And so a lot of us are part-time and we don't earn that much. And so that to be like taken from us, and I see Jose nodding his head, that's something huge that eats away at the small earnings that we do get. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you very much, Allie. Appreciate that. Trisha, I think you are next up in our hand raising queue.
Yeah, thank you. So I was just wondering, the unfortunate thing I think about the disability community is that we all are so very different depending on our disabilities. And so it's not sort of like a one size fits all. You can get an e-bike and that's going to work for you. So I would encourage you to think of maybe some more creative ways to do this type of a program, like maybe a grant system. So, Allie can get rides from Uber and, Doug can get a hand cycle, and, somebody who like me who wants to have an electric attachment to my wheelchair would be able to get the piece of equipment that works for them the best, or the service that works for them the best. I do agree with Doug that when you have a disability, everything is so much harder to acquire. You do have to jump through a lot of hoops and fill out applications and wait for somebody to get back with you. And it does make it difficult, but I think that something like a grant, if you say you have a $500 transportation grant, you use it in the way that you want to, and whether or not like some of the nonprofit organizations that I've been involved in, like the Challenged Athletes Foundation, you fill out an application, you get the grant, and then in order to get a grant again the following year, you have to submit all your receipts, or to be considered for another grant, you have to submit all your receipts. So I think if we could do something like that, and everybody's filing their receipts and showing that they used the money for, transportation that was, didn't cause more emissions, I think that would be probably a fairer way to do it than to say, everybody gets a electric hand cycle, because that might not be something that, like, I'm trying to get something that I want to go get my groceries in. And a hand cycle is not the thing that fits the bill, even though I ride a hand cycle many miles a year. So it just kind of depends on the person.
Thank you, Trisha. Really great thoughts on how we can make the program, whatever it is, broad as possible to meet all those diverse needs. Jose?
Yes, thank you. And hi, Chris. How are you? So, Grace, to what you were raising, the points that you were raising. Yes, we do rely a lot on transportation networks. So what Trisha and what's your name, Ali, were saying is completely true. For us, RTD, Lyft, Uber, yellow taxis, all of them are essential to us, especially if you consider that not only people who do have money and can afford a cab or something like that, but also people who have subsidies and have to access the transportation providers who have contracts with RTD. So you do get global transportation, you do get Uber, you do get Lyft providers who have a contract with RTD to provide access a ride. So all of that's also true. So my question, I guess, is this. You mentioned, Mike, that you guys are working on several approaches to public transportation, etc. Do you guys have thought about providing alternative electric, green transportation that is more yet driven from private entities and stuff, but that are accessible, that have accessible vehicles, that move around the city, and that maybe even something like the shuttlecraft, for example, in 16th Street Mall, right? That you can take in one block and exit the next, but and it's completely free and it's completely accessible. And but that's only 16th Street Mall, right? So you're talking people who need to go from the RTD building all the way to in 19th and in downtown all the way to down to Colfax or whatever. So if we thought about providing alternative ways to move people, and that will be electric or will be highly accessible, big or whatever, then you're talking something that we do need a lot, and that does touch all kinds of population, not just the people that want recreation, but also the people who are employed by the city or people who are employed in small businesses, people who are not employed but go to do stuff downtown or in Denver, or any other area of Denver. So my question is, how extensive is your ability to contract with other kinds of providers? Because you mentioned the van, for example, to grocery shopping and things like that. That's very useful, for example.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Jose. I think that, while we have, I think, started to dip our toes into that world. So I think we have, again, the Denver connector, it's more neighborhood based, so it's not certainly going to serve the whole region. We are, again, the Montbello shuttle, I think, also is a more local option. So I think it's a really interesting proposition to think like how, I mean, I know it's maybe a conversation to talk with RTD about like how they have the accessoride service, like can we support that to some extent? That could be something that we could work on them. I don't know, try to expand that and think of other ways to create those more larger scale models. And also, I think, I don't want to speak for our colleagues in Dottie, but I think we are interested in like continuing to expand that micro transit neighborhood service into additional neighborhoods in future years. So I think there's definitely interest in doing that, but we're not, we have our Montbello, Globeville, Swansea, and hopefully more to come in that space.
Mike, if I could add, first, I just wanted to echo my appreciation for Trisha's comment that we should try to make sure that we make our programs as broad as possible to meet all the different needs. And I think absolutely, I'd say absolutely yes to that. And Jose, I'm really liking this idea. What I'm hearing, the way it's forming in my head, is that there are services out there that provide transportation. What can we do to make sure that there are more accessible vehicles available in those services so that people who need accessible vehicles do not have to wait as long to get them, and would have an easier time accessing those vehicles. So definitely, that's definitely resonating with me. So
and that's one of the things that was interesting about everything that Councilor Hind was talking about. When we talk about providers that are high, contacting with the city or with the state or however, or whatever level we're talking about, we have to pay attention to contracts, the way they are written, right? So what allowances are we giving to private corporations to be allowed to exempt or not exempt certain things, provide or not provide certain services, or only, for example, to a specific service, you can only hire a contractor that has accessible vehicles, not one that does not. Or if the purpose is specifically to address green gas emissions, we have to think about well, accessible, and yet they have to be electric or hybrid. So there are specific criteria that you can be more drilled down, if you will, in contracts and stuff like that. And I do think that, for example, another opportunity is Medicaid, because Medicaid has, even though it's not perfect, it has a great deal of different types of providers that already have a specialization in serving people with disabilities. So if the city was able to say, people who have Medicaid get to have certain amounts of services, you know, exempt or discounted, or however you want to phrase it or do it, for this type of services, right? So whether it's transportation or whether it is being able, like Doug said, being able to find a hand vehicle, that actually, meets our needs and things like that.
Yeah, thank you, Jose. Ali, I wanted to see you have your hand up.
So earlier, someone was talking about, I think it might have been Mr. Hines, that was talking about how in Mexico City, a driver can like agree to take down a wheelchair, things like that. Was that you, Mr. Hines? Okay. I was just making sure. So one of the things, like, as that kind of just aha moment for me is, I am someone who is in the process of getting a seizure alert dog. Slight squirrel, it's Epilepsy Awareness Month. Wear a lot of purple. We'll appreciate it. Anyways, if that ever gets implemented into this area, I personally think it would just be like a kindness to those with service dogs a if a say an Uber driver or a Lyft driver, Lime, whoever, if they were able to mark down like, yes, I'm willing to have a dog in my car, because I know in a few months, like, I will be having a seizure alert dog. And then the other thing that kind of came to mind in terms of accessibility and transportation was, if there's a possibility for RTD to expand like the areas that it runs buses to more frequently. So for example, I live in Littleton and I have to walk 1.5 miles to get to a bus stop. That only runs once an hour. So my timing has to be great. And so I don't know if there's a way for one of you to contact RTD and maybe suggest, like, hey, can you run more frequently to these areas that don't get as much like transit to them? Because places in Aurora, it's like every 5 minutes you see a bus down Mississippi Avenue. That's not the case out here in Littleton, because a lot of people do own cars, but I happen to be disabled and I live in Littleton. So just food for thought.
Thank you, Ali.
And Councilor Hines,
Yes.
thanks for your sharing. That is so true, right? And I think, Ali, and I think that's a great point, what Chris is saying in the chat. No one can deny you access, not even if it is a private company, can deny you access because you have a service animal. So keep that in mind.
And I just want to add that we absolutely share your thoughts on RTD, and we would all like to see more frequent service and service to more places as well. So we will use our voice for that. And if I may add, our colleague Ian, who is here on the call, was just on Tuesday elected to a seat on the RTD board. So you have an advocate right here on the call. So take it, leave it in your hands, Ian.
I'm happy to be. My email's right here. My other email right now is ianharwick@gmail.com. That's the easiest way to reach me. So if you have RTD concerns until I get an official RTD email, that's the best one. You can email me there, or I'm also the community outreach person for things e-mobility here. So if anyone has a desire to talk further, I talked to Doug the other day kind of through a group meeting, and I've spoken to Jose a number of times. Sorry. So if anybody would like to chat further about community programs or ideas that they have, they want to sort of take them offline, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to do a call, Zoom, coffee, whatever, and I'll meet wherever you're at.
Oh, so you will definitely meet Jamie Lewis. Okay, Ian.
Works for me.
He's always there with the RTD board.
I'm looking forward to it.
One thing I don't want to, I'm not trying to cut this off, but I think if there if people do want to share, I think Ali had shared your email at some point. If you want to share your email address in the chat will be, I'll have a copy of all the chat so we can continue the conversation. You know, anyone, I want to make sure we've gotten some really great feedback so far today. Again, I want to continue the conversation. So if people are interested in, you know, again, talking one-on-one or two-on-two or whatever that ratio is with Ian and myself about kind of the moving that conversation forward, please throw, you know, email in the chat, and we will be in touch with you to schedule more time to dive deeper.
Hello, everybody, and thank you. I'm thrilled. Thank you, Chris, for reaching out and letting me know this was happening. I'm Kim Easton. I am the CEO with the National Sports Center for the Disabled. We run adaptive outdoor recreation programs in Denver Front Range and in Grand County Winter Park areas, all types of different programs. We are planning on piloting and then soon to be launching various different types of adaptive biking programs for all of our participants and residents in all of these areas. It's a offering we don't currently have. And it can look a lot of different ways. In the Front Range, we will have road biking and more trail riding. Obviously in Winter Park, more mountain biking, and even going to the level of kind of extreme downhill type adaptive biking. So if there's anything I can do or we can do as an organization to help facilitate, whether that's taking advantage of perhaps being able to order bikes with more economy of scale, back to the point around the fact that these bikes are very expensive, especially e-assist versions of them are very expensive. But maybe, and someone had made a statement about how just the manufacturing, there's not a big clientele. So these companies do not give discounts. They don't, there's not much margin for them. So if we band together, there may be a way that we could better get some purchasing power, and we'd be more than happy to be a partner in that in whatever way might look useful. The other two things I would add, one is in terms of like going back to truly the e-bike rebate program, and how do we better create access, more inclusive access to those dollars and that concept. I think one thing to keep in mind is that a recumbent bike, whether it's foot pedaled, hand pedaled, or e-bike driven on our roads, is incredibly dangerous. I would never, I don't think I would ever get in a recumbent bike off of a protected bike path. It's that, and so I think that's something we have to keep in mind is, I know the city is doing great work improving bike lanes, protected bike lanes with the little white barriers. So all of those are better steps, but I think just being mindful that currently someone with a disability using that any type of recumbent bike is really not visible and really could really be a challenge. I think the other component where we might be a good partner, and again, just really happy to talk to the city or whomever might want to do some work around this, would be learning how to ride those bikes also is not incredibly easy. So if there was a way that we could be a great partner in providing some training and how to use those bikes, how to get on them and off, like load and unload. I mean, there's just so many nuances of this equipment. It's not like, oh, if we get an e-bike to someone with a disability, they can just jump on it and go safely. So wherever we could plug in to provide some of that support, education, training, and any of the like, just please, we're always here. We want to better be engaged in the Denver community. However we can do that.
Thank you, Kim. Appreciate that. I think we will definitely be reaching out to dig more deeper into your knowledge and your organization's expertise in this space.
And I'm watching the chat and seeing everybody put their emails in, and some of you noting what you do as well. And what a talented group we have here, and such a valuable resource. And I speaking on behalf of our agency, really appreciate your time and your openness in this discussion. And I've been taking copious notes, and I think that you will definitely see action from us soon. And as was asked earlier, this is definitely only the beginning of the conversation. We absolutely want to come back and engage you again and broaden the discussion as well. Thanks again to Councilman Hines too, and Allison for helping pull this together, and Mike for stewarding us through.
Excellent. Thank you again. I just want to reiterate what Grace just said. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. This is, I think, just the beginning, but we're definitely trying to figure out a path forward to make all of our programs more accessible, and whether that's e-bikes, micro transit, other services. So really grateful for everyone's thoughts and feedback. You've given certainly myself a lot of good food for thought, and I think a lot of great conversations to continue going forward, so we can kind of learn more about this space and figure out kind of good ways to advance these efforts.
Thanks all.
Thank you all.
Thanks,
Have a great
everybody.
night.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Have a great day.
Everyone.
Time and energy.
Have a good day.